between Orlando Brown Jr. and the Kansas City Chiefs will not happen this year. It's heading towards him likely playing on the tag in 2022, which is really a win for the Chiefs, as well as him if he plays out the rest of the year on that tag if he signs it. So let's go ahead and get into it really quickly before everybody, jumps down. Thank you for joining me today. This is the RGR Football Channel. Thank you all once again for being here with me on this Friday afternoon, almost Friday afternoon it would be, but we now know that Orlando Brown Jr. is going to end up playing 2022 on the tag, like I said. So let's talk a little bit about everything that's gone down over the last hour-ish that we've really known, that we've heard anything about this situation. So the Chiefs had apparently offered Orlando Brown a 6-year deal that was just over the average salary per year than what Trent Brown was getting, $23 million a year. That's absolutely absurd. Okay. That's one. That's an absurd contract for Orlando Brown. But context, we know that the Chiefs are trying to lock down Orlando Brown in the future of the left tackle position for Patrick Mahomes for the foreseeable future. So it does make sense trying to get that deal done at whatever cost. And unfortunately, that ended up being a lot of money. So he said no. What that likely means is that the structure of the deal, meaning the guarantees, were much less. So we're looking at a deal that was 6 years, $140 million, probably close to $50-60 million of that guaranteed. There's a reason he turned that down, because guaranteed money is now what all contracts are about. So getting all of that money and trying to secure it for long term, make the generational wealth that his father was unable to do, has been his biggest thing. It's one of the things he's talked about the most in his career to this point, about getting that money and getting through to be able to pass it on to his family and continue to create generational wealth. So that's the first thing. He turned it down because the guarantees weren't there. This whole situation with his new agent is it's very, very interesting, because what you're trying to do is set a precedent for other players. And when you turn down not just a market setting contract for the tackle position, you're also kind of telling everyone that you don't necessarily think that you're going to earn all of it. And that's just a little bit of it. It's not the whole situation, because when we look back at this past year, Orlando Brown got better towards the end of the season. Yes, probably about the halfway point to the end through the playoffs. Mahomes figured out his strengths, his weaknesses, what he could do to help utilize and best get everything up to that point that would help them be good. Like Mahomes figured out to stepping up into that side of the pocket, moving out if he needed to, and being able to get out to his right if he had to. So all of that figured out was fine. They figured that out. Now, what we know about Orlando Brown Jr. is because I believe that Orlando Brown is not a top 5-7 tackle, not left tackle. That's my own opinion. But when you're trying to lock down any of this situation and you're trying to lock down this tackle position, you're always going to be actively trying to get that most money. And continuing to protect Patrick Mahomes is a thing that absolutely needs to happen. So figuring out what they're going to do with Orlando Brown is going to happen over the next year, I would imagine. If he plans to sign that franchise tag, he says that he'll be doing that over the next week. On July 25th, we'll obviously find out by then if he's going to report to camp. But this next week or so, we're going to figure out if he's going to end up being there. And I don't expect him to miss any games at all, because if you want to get the money, you have to play. And again, he would be forfeiting up to about close to $1 million per game if he chooses to not play some games. So yes, I know there's going to be a lot of questions about the trading, and my daughter is currently trying to play around here. So just bear with me a little bit. The trading can't happen until he's signed the franchise tag. One, also, we now know the contract that he was, one, offered, two, that he turned down, that other teams have seen and will know about. So I'm not entirely sold that you could even trade him this season if you wanted to. He's going to have to play this season on the tag and show that he's worth that contract not only to be able to get it offered again next year, but to possibly round up some of that trade compensation that you're looking for. So let's see here. We have, both of these things that I'm looking at talking about his average per year being crazy. What's up, Stevie? How you doing? He turned it down because he didn't want Trent Williams' contract, which is really a 3-year deal with it. Apparently, he didn't think they could get 2 to 3 years of that Trent contract. So I don't necessarily know anything about their situation, why exactly they turned it down. What I would assume is that the guarantees weren't all there, which is not surprising. But they did have the transition tag on him, so that's also leading into all of that. So this is a very interesting situation with Kansas City because I think that Orlando Brown's a good player. I don't think he's a great player. He's going to have a huge season ahead of him. Like, this is betting on yourself, trying to get Avery. I need you to go watch your movie, please. Just always trying to get in and do everything. So, training camp, 1. Do I think he's going to report to training camp? I'm not sold on that yet. I don't think he's ready to report to camp. Obviously, in the next week, like I said, we will find that out. But the nuts and bolts of this situation are, not only do the Chiefs have to be readily available with players to play left tackle, whether that's going to be Joe Thuney, whether it's going to be if Lucas Niang's healthy, I don't know. Whether that's going to be Darian Kennard, I doubt it, because I don't think he's a left tackle. I think he's a right tackle, and I think he can play right tackle and guard. Left tackle is a bit more difficult, as we've seen with Orlando Brown Jr. So this is one of the more interesting situations that we've seen going into training camp. Now, it wouldn't shock me to see Kansas City bring in an Eric Fisher to possibly maybe force Orlando Brown Jr.'s hand a little bit to sign that tag to play this year. Like I said, I do believe he's not going to miss any games this year because you'd be forfeiting $1 million per game to sit out. So, one, for someone who's looking for money and you know that you have turned down a contract, okay? You turned it down, which means that you're still looking for that basis of your salary, your basis of the guarantees. In order to get those, guess what? You have to perform. You have to earn it. You have to play it. So, he's going to have to show that he's worth it. That's the big thing. That's the big number 1. And number 2, when you're turning down the contract, you're also telling everybody in the league that you are betting on yourself. Okay. So turning up into camp or not showing up in camp is one thing. That's not an issue for me personally. But when you start to miss games, that's when teams will, one, not want to trade for you, and you're not going to end up getting the contract that you wanted to begin with. So, like I said, I don't believe he's going to miss any of the games. I do think that this is a great opportunity for him to earn the guarantees in the contract, because if Kansas City is already showing you that they're willing to pay you like the best tackle in football, which you're not, then you need to earn that now. You need to give them a little bit of a leeway, because they did it with you. Because everything that we heard up until today was that they kind of balked at the idea of paying that much. Even though the guarantees aren't there, they're still trying to say, look, we see value here. And I think that as long as you're in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes and you're in a really friendly system to playing at left tackle as much as you possibly can, he's a very, very good run blocker. So I think that there's some value in not only him continuing to stay in Kansas City, but now they've shown they want you there too. And maybe I know the guarantees weren't there, but again, this is going to be interesting, because if the Chiefs finding out that maybe he's not playing up to what they thought he was this year, they're going to still have an opportunity to trade him. I don't know if they're going to get what they ended up giving up for him to begin with, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to find a way to address the situation. So left tackle, obviously we get to watch during camp, because I don't know if he's going to be there or not, but guys, we're going to talk about right now, actually. Thank you, Jake. Assuming OB's Orlando Brown's production stays similar to the 2021 season, do you see any potential left tackles in the coming draft? That's not. Yeah, no, I was right. My bad. Appreciate the super chat, man. Expect Hayes to look to the future. Do you see any potential left tackles in the coming draft? So I'm about to start evaluating some draft some more draft prospects on the offensive line, and I'm going to be starting with Ohio State's offensive line. I think there's their right tackle declared last year, and right now I think that Ohio State's left tackle is currently one of the best prospects in the country. So I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I do think that he's going to be one of the guys talked about. And when it comes to the Chiefs possibly going after a tackle in the draft, the problem becomes when you're trying to get a prospect, when you're trying to get someone in the first round, you have to have that draft capital. And where we expect Kansas City to finish at the end of the season in the playoffs, closer to the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl, we all have the aspirations. Patrick Mahomes, his offensive line, you don't have realistic top shelf prospects. That's one of the reasons that they traded away a first round pick for Orlando Brown Jr., knowing that you're not going to be able to get those top tackle prospects because you don't plan on being anywhere near the top to get the best guys. The guys at the end of the first round are more tackles that maybe become maybe they're good, maybe they're guards, maybe they're things you don't need. So it's really tough, especially right now, to say that there's going to be someone at the end of the first round that they can draft that's going to be able to play at left tackle next year and going forward, when the plan, at least right now, it looks to be Orlando Brown Jr. being the key and the plug at left tackle, because they clearly, the fact that they even brought up an AAV over Trent Williams' contract shows you that they want him in Kansas City and that they think that he can be their long-term solution. That's what they want. So I'm interested to see what ends up happening with that whole situation. But again, thank you, Jake, for the super chat. No problem, Keys. We all have some sleep deprivation. It's not a big deal. All right, so this was the question that I was looking for. Thank you for the question, Zach. Okay, so who can play left tackle for us at a high level on the team or available outside the franchise? I don't think there's anybody outside that can play at a high level unless you're expecting maybe an Eric Fisher to come back to anywhere close to what he was before last year. It wasn't very good in Indianapolis, and he was able to, play a little bit here and there and kind of have some really, really up and down seasons, but they released him because he wasn't very good. So if he's healthy and he's fully healthy, I do kind of expect, I don't know, maybe I'm just more of the seeing that the Chiefs have that relationship with him at the end, but they did cut him, so maybe he doesn't want to come back. I do kind of expect them to look into bringing in a backup because you don't have the security. Thank you, James Damon. The Paris Johnson. Yes, Paris Johnson is the tackle from Ohio State. Sorry about that. I get a little distracted. So they have to be able to bring in somebody in case. I think we've seen at least one game. We know that Joe Thuney played very well in relief when he wasn't prepping to play left tackle. He was prepping to play left guard. Assuming that you have to have him at left tackle for an extended period of time where he's getting those reps, yes, I think that he is in a position to be able to play that position, to be able to do it at a pretty high level, not an elite level, and maybe not at the top of what Orlando Brown could have played, but we're talking about getting by for 4 or 5 games, and he's 100% a guy that can do that. I do think if Lucas Niang is healthy, he's an option, but again, we don't have any clue what he looks like, what he's going to look like, what the health concerns are with his lower body. I think he played pretty well last year, considering still coming off of his season where he opted out, still learning the offense and everything like that. So it wasn't awful, but again, we're trying to project him into a starting role at left tackle, which is a much different role than right tackle still in today's NFL. Avery, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, she's watching the movie, but she's having fun. But yeah, so this is it's fun. I know that it's not ideal, and I definitely don't think that we both, if you guys watched this long enough, you know that I was confident that it would have gotten done last week. But the simple fact that they did make quite a bit of progress in the last week and a half, it tells me that both sides are willing to work. And I'm not a huge fan of him turning down the contract. I know the guarantees aren't there, but when the number you want is the number you want, and the team specifically has shown the willingness to work on that number, but also not giving you the guarantees kind of tells you where you sit as a player, in my opinion. But We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be fishy to say the absolute least, but I don't expect him to miss any games. I don't expect him to, be a hugely terrible tackle this season. The contract year is undefeated. Like that's what this is. He's essentially and now in a contract season, like much like he was before. And I'm not hugely worried about him being a bad player. I do think that he's going to play better this year than he did last year. And if he does, then he's going to get the contract he's looking for. So as of right now, I'm not super worried about the future of Orlando Brown in Kansas City. It all is going to start coming in with, say he doesn't show up to camp. Say he ends up playing and the things start to talk. Okay. Things start coming up about, his if he starts being a little bit more selfish in the offensive line room, if he starts to talk a little bit more, if his agent starts talking a bit more, there might be some situations that occur where the Chiefs start to poke around. Other teams start to poke around. It wouldn't surprise me if there were some halfway through the season trade rumors that ends up popping up. So please stop. Avery. One more time. Absolutely. It's like children don't care about anything that goes on around them. So this has been another thing. I don't think that there's any way the deal gets done. I think the Chiefs offered, at least not this year. I don't think that the Chiefs offered what they were going to, and it was more money than I think that they expected to or planned to initially. And the reason you offer that money without the guarantees is because there's still questions about what he can do and what his ceiling is. The stability of left tackle is important. So the 6-year term is, again, we don't even get the details of what happens if he gets hurt, what happens if his play drops off. I don't have any idea what the actual contract structure looked like. I just know it was 6-year, probably close to $140 million. And I would imagine 50 to 55 to maybe 60 million guaranteed, and then everything else not guaranteed. So this is the season that he's going to have to show that he's worth those guarantees. Okay. So all this offseason work of playing tennis, probably losing a bit of weight, getting his footwork right. Now is the time you have to show that these things are getting you better prepared for the season. And if he plays like he did towards the end of the season, all the way through a full NFL season, I don't expect anything different out of the Chiefs. The guarantees will come up. Maybe the AAV comes down a little bit because at the end of the day, as long as you're getting the guaranteed money, then I think that they can still figure out a contract where maybe the AAV is lower and the long-term deal is there and the guarantees are still there. So I think that they can figure something out as long as he shows on the field. Again, play on the field will get you the guarantees. And when you don't have the guarantees, it tells you the play hasn't been there yet. That's my big thing. We know that Orlando Brown hasn't been the best tackle in football. Hell, he wasn't even a top 10 tackle in football last year. Okay? That's just the truth. He's going to be better this year. But he's been working in the offseason, come and show during the regular season, maybe even shows up halfway through training camp that you're ready, that you've been in working and you can do this. So I think that he can do enough to get those guarantees where he wants them to. It's all going to be about showing it on the field. So yeah, I think the deal's not getting done until next year. So this season is pretty much in the next, I would imagine the next five days, we hear if he ends up showing plans to sign his tender and come play and be at training camp. I think that's a reasonable thing to assume from Orlando Brown, is that play ball a little bit. The Chiefs play ball with the number you wanted, play ball, show up to training camp and do something like that and just be there. So I'm just trying to articulate the best that I can of these contracts, showing good faith. I think the team, like I said, showed good faith with that number, getting him closer to the number that he was looking for. And now it's time for him to do the same and show up, put the work in, show them that you've been putting the work in. And that's going to be what gets the deal done. At the end of the day, having a left tackle in Kansas City for 6 years, I think is very good, especially if you expect the team, like we all do, with a better defense in the coming years to be AFC Championship, Super Bowl contenders year after year, which we all do. So it's not too much to ask, Orlando, just to show up to work and put the work in and have this season be your actual prove it time and show that you're worth those guaranteed money. That's what it's all going to be about. So, if you guys have any other sparse questions, appreciate 202 of you being in here on this great Friday. And if you have any more simple questions before we head out for the rest of the day of this little update of Orlando Brown before training camp starts next week, please don't be afraid. Put those question marks in front, and we'll answer a few, and we'll get on out of here so you guys can enjoy the rest of your Friday. Good, correct, Eric. He doesn't play, then his value drops as well. If you don't play games, even if he comes back and he's like really, really good, I think that holding out can only hurt him, and not playing games can only hurt him. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing Eric Fisher in, just as insurance. Again, you have Joe Thuney. You paid him a ton of money to not only be your left guard, but to be backups at two other positions, at left tackle and center, which you don't have to really worry about center. But if something were to happen, you have him there. Jacob, exactly what do you mean the training camp timeline? Like, when does it start? Exactly, Stevie. Exactly. Wasting years of your prime set out. It's dumb. It's not worth it. Yeah, next Friday. Because if that's what you're asking about, Jacob, it does start next Friday for Kansas City. The Chiefs training camp starts next Friday. Think of a question, Michael? We get Quinn or Dunlap. We need a pass rusher badly. So now, if Orlando Brown signs his contract, his tender, excuse me, he adds $13 million to the cap hit because that's all guaranteed money for the franchise tag. That's what you signed up for. They won't have any money until a Mahomes restructure comes through, if that does, to go get anybody. You won't have any room because Quinn's going to be a lot of money. I mean, Dunlap, probably you could get him on a veteran type minimum deal. But that, if you now with Brown on the franchise tag, when he signs it, if he does, he will then be on the roster and then accounted for with his money, his cap hit. The Chiefs will be unable to trade for any of the Robert Quinns or any more heavy pass rushers. They won't have the money. Thank you, Varian. Oh, yeah, I was right. For the question, I think he will be exposed this season at left tackle and won't be on the season next year. See, I don't think so. I don't think that he'll be exposed. He was the most he was exposed last year was, I think, probably what, in the playoffs. That was like the most he was, and I think that he'll be just better this year. So I don't necessarily think that he's going to be exposed. I think he's a good player for what he is, getting better in the system, more comfortable. Again, if the work he did this offseason with his footwork, with his tennis playing shows up, like that's, and Mahomes understands all of that, he'll be just fine. Yeah, it's not ideal for them having to deal with the contract with the 13 million. But again, you're getting Orlando Brown this year really at a discount. $13 million a season for a tackle, starting left tackle, is a discount. And even next year, when it goes up to 19, 20 million, I expect them to tag him again and deal with this whole thing next year. So, but again, ball out, play a little bit, play ball with the Chiefs, show up to training camp, put the work in again, and do. That's it. That's all you can ask for. So that'll be the last one we get to today. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Friday. I know it's hard to deal with news that the deal didn't get done. But again, I do think next year he will have that deal and he'll be in Kansas City. Maybe the number of the term length goes down. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. We'll kind of figure out how that goes. But because again, now you have that cap space this year. You have no cap space now. He's going to be, I would imagine, he signs, and that's a 1 year less. So maybe next year it's 5 instead of 6. So that wouldn't shock me too much. Again, he's still a younger player, but getting these left tackles and these tackles figured out for the foreseeable future, this offensive line is really, really important. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a huge issue. So if you guys have any other. Actually, that doesn't make any sense. It's Friday. You guys go enjoy yourselves. Like this is going to be training camp starts a week from today. We're finally going to be in the thick of everything. Football is almost here. Like it's going to be here. Like it's here soon. This is the last month without football for until March. So enjoy it. Maybe not enjoy it because this is going to be the best time of year. Watching football and getting two Chiefs football and through all this. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday. Thank you for being with me here today. And yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Not ideal. We didn't get to see the deal done this season, but still, I do think it's going to happen next year. I don't think Orlando Brown's going to be gone. And if he is, that tells you something about him and how the Chiefs view him. This whole process taught them something about him. So again, you guys have a fantastic day. We will make sure you guys tune in to the channel a little bit later. We're going to have a fun surprise for you. A video with a guy you might recognize is coming back on to join us at RGR Football. So make sure you tune in later for the drop of his first episode on this channel. And you guys